I think that these hard, fast rules can leave a lot of women feeling helpless. It can leave a lot of women feeling like alienated, unsure. And so we need to just be really careful with how we express science, practice, personal opinions, so on. It's got to always come back to the individual and really center on them.
You are a world-renowned expert in women's training and women's health. What are the big rocks? If a young girl's listening to this and is new to the gym and new to training and wants to put on some muscle size or get stronger, what are the things she should be focusing on first before performance-enhancing drugs are even on her radar?
The best way to build muscle is to train hard, train intentional, meaning it's not just going to the gym and being like, I'm going to go to failure on every single exercise. So it's training hard, it's training intentional, and then it's having foundations or pillars of not only recovery in place, but things to support your training. So nutrition, sleep, um, positive social relationships. Those are all the things, and again, so many other kind of things in our toolbox. So there are so many of those fundamental aspects that don't get put into place before people pursue the drug route. They perceive that the drug route is a quick fix. It's going to get them there faster. And of course that, so and so on social media said that there's no side effects, so no harm done. So that would be number one, is that like we really need to think through like, are we training hard enough to create the intended result and smart enough to create the intended result? I can tell you, like, I was an idiot back in like my early training days where I was overtraining, under eating, and I didn't have these things in place, and I had health consequences as a result. And that doesn't always get talked about. So unfortunately, we kind of label drugs to be this end all be all bad thing for women's health, when the reality is that yeah, overtraining, under eating, chronic poor recovery is not good for health, short term and long term. And for some individuals, they can get through it. Other individuals, there could be long term effects of them. So that would be the first thing. The second thing is that women's health is, I mean, it is as bad as the fitness industry in terms of camps of information, pseudoscience, myths, misunderstandings, practitioners that are bound by research that may not be the best examples of scientific rigor. And so when women go to their doctors, women ask, say, if I were to say like, okay, well, if you're thinking about going on, X substance, you should go and get a health check first. Well, for a 20, let's use that example again, for a 22-year-old female to go in and request a physical, that is a hard thing to do as a female. There are so many barriers to good healthcare for women that are still systemic. Like they're still everywhere. We see them. We see women that have, let's say, abnormal uterine bleeding, getting the only solution that they get provided is to go on an oral contraceptive pill. And that's not to say that that may not be an effective way to overcome this, but it's not the only thing we should be talking about. It's not the only thing that practitioners should be providing. And I say this as a researcher looking at the research longitudinal, so across time, and also critically looking at all the different studies. I mean, when I talk about like even my doctoral work, it's like it's taken 7, 8 years, because if you do it dense and if you do it deep and you really ask the questions on every single example, it takes time to do it. And that's when you can really start to see like where these ideas come from and how they impact individuals on a one-on-one basis, whether we're talking about how medical practitioners like create information or how users themselves understand it. So I would say that a big thing is that we just don't have that conversation about what it means to train hard for, let's say, hypertrophy or for health for women, and what does it mean to be able to help women be as healthy as possible and have a practitioner support them in that without feeding into myths and misconceptions around what it means to be a biological female. So that as a result, if women do even go on use, they're often not able to get the care they need from a medical practitioner to help them get to a better health state after they've used this compound.
When it comes to training for hypertrophy, are there any significant protocol differences required between men and women? The reason I asked that is I interviewed Dr. Stacey Sims, and she was talking around different nutrition protocols. Women should do faster training, for instance, or post-exercise ice bath or cold water immersion, the physiological differences between men and women. On the gym floor, in the weights room, are there significant things that women should be doing differently to elicit the same hypertrophy response, or is it pretty much what works for men will work for women when it comes to muscle building?
One size, that's the thing. It's we don't Human beings are so incredibly different, and who I am today is not going to be who I am tomorrow or the next day. So I challenge some of the research that takes these really hard stances that say women should be doing X and men should be doing Y. We know from sex-based and gender-based research that the differences between biological men and women is are actually a lot less than we think that they are, and the differences within groups. So the differences among biological women are actually far greater than we perceive them to be. And that's not me just saying that as like, based on my background. That's me looking at a lots of different research that's come up with that, whether we're talking about like neurosciences to physiology to pharmacokinetics, that they're go, okay, no, there are important differences between the sexes, but are they as big as we perceive them to be? And then when we talk about women, we homogenize that. All women should be doing this. And it's like, no, 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 no. The diversity women is massive. The individual factors beyond just reproductive function are massive. And so I really feel that what we have to promote in individuals is something that will help them create a sustainable and positive life change. So if that's training, it's how do we create a sustainable plan that is going to be tailored to that person, to what they're interested in, to what we know is going to be necessary for the end goal, whether it's a health goal, performance goal, or a combination of both. And how do we do this in a way that fits them to a T and recognize that it's humans are fluid. We're not static creatures. We're not, I'm not going to train the same as another individual that's age matched for me and even maybe has a similar athletic background to me. What works for me today in this kind of era of my life is very different than what worked for me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and it's going to look different 5 years from now. Even I would say 6 months from now, it's likely going to look different, right? We don't talk about things like training age or athletic background and how that may impact an individual's ability to build muscle. We don't talk about underlying physiological health status, especially for women. It's so anchored in just reproductive function. Like, what are their hormones doing? What's their menstrual cycle status doing? That we don't talk about, hey, well, what actually is like their response to, let's say, glucose? What is their ability and affinity to be able to buffer against cellular stress? Those things get lost when we focus so much on training specific women, hormones, menstrual cycle. And that those things matter. They're very important to the muscle building equation. So I guess I counter it and going that like I see women training all different ways. I see women eating all different ways. Is there one size fits all? No. Are there certain things that we can say with a relative degree of certainty may not be advantageous for long-term health, short-term performance? Absolutely. If somebody is in a chronic caloric deficit with high amounts of training stimulus all the time, that probably is not going to have positive outcomes for them. With the idea of fasting, do we know that women's kind of hypothalamic reproductive axes, the nervous system, hypothalamus, the pituitary, the ovaries, that's very sensitive to physiological stressors and psychological stressors. And we know that nutrition is an incredibly important anchor that helps with our rhythmic production of hormones. So do we want to be doing things that are going to interrupt that? Probably not. But are there certain individuals that, let's say, the only time they have to train is at 4:30 in the morning because they have 3 kids, a full-time job, and a side hustle, and it's either there or some other time? And is it fair for me then to be like, you cannot do this, it's terrible for you? No, it's my job to try to figure out a solution, try to figure out something that is a middle ground that may not be perfect, but it's the lesser evils of sorts. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to say like gold stamp, yes, you can fast. No, it's going to mean that we're going to work on it. We're going to figure out a solution. I think that these hard fast rules can leave a lot of women feeling helpless. It can leave a lot of women feeling like alienated, unsure. And so we need to just be really careful with how we express science, practice, personal opinions, so on. It's got to always come back to the individual and really center on them.